Now, some are comparing this to former President Nixon, saying it isn't illegal when the president does it, as if a president can do anything. That's not what the Supreme Court said today, and that is not the law. And again, we'll have the debate about the decision. But what I'm saying is, look, Biden is just doing what we see all the time now, which is just playing to advantage. So let's talk about the president for a second. He delivered this statement tonight. It was coherent, if not cogent and compelling. Very different than how he was at the debate, where he was often incoherent and completely unconvincing. But you need to see the game, my brothers and sisters. This is not a surprise. Biden is who we know he is. That's who Biden was at the debate, who we know he has been. This is how he is when he has to think on his feet in a spontaneous setting with pressure. He's not good. He's old and ailing. Does that mean he can't hold meetings? He can't do the job? He can't meet with leaders? He can't do things one-on-one? No. And I've been saying this for months. He is who you think he is. He doesn't move that well. He has a different energy curve, and he's not good on his feet. By the way, Joe Biden has never been great on his feet. He was a gaffe machine at his best. So why is the media acting surprised? It's the game. There is an opportunity for them to run with a new narrative that is found compelling with clicks and readers and viewers. Why haven't they been calling for Biden to step down for months? He's been this way for months. This is a disingenuous display. This is the game, and they know it. You know what I think the only honest position is? If you have a crisis of conscience and you feel you must step out of the normal lane of objectivity and say what is best for the country, then you know what they should say? You know what they should say? Both should step away and leave their campaigns for the betterment of the American people. The people have made it plain for months. They want neither of you in a way we have never seen. Never. Almost 3 in 4 of you saying, I don't want either of these guys. Trump and Biden are embarrassments to American greatness. Two old, angry, expired men without new ideas, without compelling plans, who both abuse the truth and trust of the people around them, both with long legacies that have been weighed and measured and found lacking. Both of them. Neither will be remembered in history as a great man. Shame on the parties for taking us here. I don't blame Trump or Biden. I'll be honest. Why? You give somebody who's got a hunger and an ambition for greatness, opportunity, they're going to take it. People are weak and simple. Okay? I am, you are, not to judge you. The parties, though, this is on them. This is the fruit of their battle to the bottom, the binary game I talk to you about all the time. This is the only place a two-party system can take us. Which is worse? When that's the basis of comparison, when opposition is a legitimate position, when cooperation is weakness, right? When compromise is weakness, when stopping the other, when demonizing the other, when any disagreement has to be a focus of opposition because they're bad, this is the only place you can get to until you have the absurdity of an empty comparison. And that's what Trump versus Biden is. Madman versus dead man. Madman versus dead man. That is the cartoonish comparison. And it's not that far off, all due respect to President Biden. I hope he has many years of life left, but they're not going to be anywhere near the height of his powers. So see the game. This rush to get rid of Biden. It's media convenience. It's the game. And it is also our friends on the right playing to advantage. They are absolutely seeding the stories that Biden is out. They're not coming from the left. Why? Why not? The speculation is bad enough for Biden. He has been weakened by this talk, even if he stays in. Now, the idea hold. The idea that when I say hold, that means the prompter doesn't move. It's very simple. You can do it. When they say, well, the polls show he can't win, it's not true. I know what their internal polling shows. I've been working this like crazy for the last 36 hours. You know what's really scary? That debate didn't change the numbers that much, like literally within the margin of error. That's how pathetic this contest is, that the guy literally freezes on camera. Medicare. And it doesn't even really change the numbers. What more do we need to see and to feel and to experience collectively to demand better, to demand change? Nothing changes if nothing changes. Oh, but this one's too important. You can't have Trump. You have to vote for Biden. Trump's going to do horrible things. Look, I'm not sold on that. Why? He does not have the intelligence, the strategic sense, the philosophical basis, the understanding of his own ambition to be a true authoritarian. He's just a bully. And he's surrounded by lightweights. We saw it last time. He'll have worse people around him this time. Oh, well, that makes it even more scary. Yeah, it does in terms of progress. But not in terms of this idea that he wants to tank the democracy and destroy the country. I don't believe it. I don't believe he has it in him, not because he's moral. I think he's completely amoral. That's not the point. He just wants to win, to say that he did, and talk a lot of trash. We saw what he did with power. He didn't do anything that impressive. He couldn't even build his wall. He only built like 50 miles of it. He's a mouth and a bully. That's what he is. And you know what he's riding on? This is the worst part for me. He doesn't deserve the support he has. These men and women, these families across the country that have legit disaffection, legit desperation, worries about their present and their future, concerns about our culture, concerns about our value structure to the extent that there even is one, desperate for a return to the rational. They are not wrong to want a disruptor to go in and bust up the system. Does he exaggerate it? Yes. Does he play on their outrage? Is he a demagogue? Yes, yes, yes. But they are right to feel the way they do. In the main, I believe. They just picked a lousy change agent who's not going to give them what they deserve. Biden, here's the truth, okay? He is who we thought he was. Should he be the best the Democrats have to offer you? Hell no. Do they have better? Yeah, according to the polling, anyone would be better from the Democratic side than him. We're in this weird, Kafkaesque, Faustian proposition where Trump can only beat Biden and Biden maybe can only beat Trump. We are literally at our weakest. That's what we're doing here. We're playing the worst game that we can. In America, of all places. That's my hope for you, is that you look at these two and reject the status quo. We have to do better than this. Leave the parties, or at least complain to your team that you're embarrassed by them and you demand better. To open up primaries at the state level to give you better people. Who would want to get involved with this? Now, is Biden on the way out? Not that I know. Are there conversations going on in the party that weren't going on before the debate? Yes. Who? Mainly the people who run the money. Now, they are starting to get the second phase of feedback, which is from the unions. The polls did not move the numbers that back much, and that slowed it down. The electeds are circling around Biden. That is going to slow it down also. Does that mean it can't happen? That he's definitely the guy? No. Listen to what Jamie Raskin. Now, I've been trying to get Congressman Raskin. I can't get him on the phone. He won't call me. He won't email me. But what he said, he's definitely going to be our keynote guy, whether he's the candidate or not. By the way, nominees don't give the keynote. So I don't know what he was talking about in terms of if he's the nominee and gives the keynote. So he may be a rallying point for the party, but that doesn't mean he's going to be the nominee. Has Obama told him to quit? Not as far as I can tell. Has the campaign been suspended? Absolutely not. Will it? I don't know. Does it have to happen now? No. Well, it can't go to a convention. There'd be chaos, right? Yes, it can, and that may be the best way to change the ticket. Why? It'll definitely get eyeballs on the convention. It will create energy. It will give them a narrative to show that they're better than the Republicans, that they're an active democracy. There's a real process. They're really doing something here. They're just not capitulating, literally giving their head over to a bully and a hard, strong man who's got a third of their party, carrying pitchforks for them. So it could happen at the convention. But it's not happening today, and it's not happening tomorrow. And the idea that it's already a done deal, I see no proof for it. But you know what we do have a ton of proof for? That what's being done with this Supreme Court decision is the same thing that's being done with the debate. They are playing you for suckers, as if you can't see that that's what's going on, that it's all about them and not about you. See the game. All right? Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.